Hello and welcome to the second episode of the Into the Unknown podcast with my co-host Scott East and myself, Michael Jeffery. Just want to offer a warm welcome and gratitude for bringing your eyes and ears and attention to share in our conversation today. And how we've been rolling with 100% of the episodes so far is to get into a little centering meditation from the start. So we're going to continue on that perfect trend. And I'll share a little practice from an organization called Generative Somatics, which is somatic work for social justice. And this came to me through author Adrienne Marie Brown. So we'll start with dropping your awareness into your body at the level of sensation, noticing what's going on in your body below your head. Not trying to fix anything, but just notice sensation, temperature, pressure, any movements, pain, pleasure, whatever it is, just being aware and noticing. And bring our awareness and our hands. I should invite you to bring your hand to a sensor, which is just a couple centimeters below your belly button. The center of our gravity when we're standing. And everything we're going to do in this practice today is going to stem out from here, and we're going to explore a few dimensions. The first dimension is length. I invite you to start exploring your awareness down from your center, down towards the earth, through your pelvis and sacrum, your legs, knees, calves, feet, just noticing where your body's touching the ground. This direction is about our connection to earth and stability, being held and safe from below. Then alternatively, coming back to our center and feeling the upward direction of length, feeling the strength of your spine as you lengthen. This direction is about dignity. The second dimension we'll explore just with our awareness, tracking our sensations, is the dimension of width. So just noticing from the center, your awareness seeping out to your side body, the sides of you. Noticing how you take up space. This body of yours takes up space in this world. In this dimension, also, maybe you can imagine those who are walking on this planet with you, beside you, your community, your family, your people. This is the place, the dimension where we connect with those who are with us, living at this time. The other dimension we'll explore is depth. So starting again from your center, we'll start allowing your awareness to move back, feeling your back, the back of your organs, the back of your heart, the back of your stomach, back of your sacrum, back of your neck. This direction is about what's come before us. This is the place of our ancestors. all the beings who've lived before, who've created the world that we get to live in now, supports us in our current life right now, today, these bodies that we're carrying. And let's notice the direction forward. This is where we're moving. So noticing the front of your organs, front of your body, your face, your neck. This is how we relate to what we're creating in the world and what hasn't come yet. And the last dimension is more energetic. This is just tuning into your longings, the seeds of potential that live in you, that we use our attention and awareness to sprout, to make the world a more beautiful place. Just breathing into the longings that you have, honoring them with your attention. And to move forward, just I'd invite you to check in with sort of the mood that you're in right now, noticing the emotional states. I wonder if you'd share, Scott, what emotion or emotions that you're noticing right now.
Yeah, thanks. I'm feeling some sadness. And I'm feeling joy. I'd say the sadness is the biggest feeling right now.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm noticing myself. I have there's a lot of contentment, but it's mixed with some nervousness, anxiety, a little bit of disgust and shame from something I was processing last night. There's a lot of contentment to be sitting here with you in this body, and yeah, I'm curious what's alive for you. What are you drawn to speak about?
So often my world that I live in is really close to me. It's really the details. It's the things that are right up to my face. It's the logistics and of life. Both the everyday things like washing dishes, and then also the logistics of putting on events or organizing this, and then as I feel into my body and as I do that meditation that you led us through, I open my eyes and I look out and I just see the forest at the edge of where I live, and I feel Gaia. I feel the whole earth in my body, and there's this longing in me to reach out beyond the logistics and to really there's a, at this time of year especially, there's something that comes up for me when spring is just hinting of cresting over into summer, and there's this sense in me of what am I, this voice is this emotional voice, what am I doing with my life? What more can I do? What I want to bite into the earth like it's a juicy fruit and or something. I want, yeah, and I think there's sadness in there that somehow, yeah, somehow I'm not doing that as much as I want to, or maybe, yeah,
Hmm.
that's just what's alive right now.
Interesting. What that evokes in me is this curiosity of, I also have a lot of logistics and responsibilities in my life, and also feel this deep longing and connection with the earth, and am so nourished, and I just feel so abundant when I'm in that connected to earth place. And um you mentioned about spring crossing over into summer, and it's like it seems like these are in ways two different seasons of our life. It's like the logistic responsibility human world, and the like just deep indigenous to earth animal bodies that we get to live in. And it's like, where, like how do those two domains of our life crest into each other? How do they, like, what happens at the meeting where we can both be in responsibility, action, planning, logistics, getting the shit done that's important, to live in this world at the time, but also be deeply rooted and seated in our natural being, in harmony and connection with the earth, um, and how those can exist simultaneously. I'm not sure there's an answer to that question.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, like, how does that go for you? Like, not necessarily an answer, but what's your experience of navigating that?
Um, kind of what comes up is, Earth came first. Um, there's billions of years of evolution of life on this planet before humans emerged, and human culture has been emerging since then, but it's a very short amount of time, um, in comparison. Um, so I think there's something about coming back to the earth first, like starting by paying attention. Um, maybe that's just in a microcosm of a day. Like, how do I, like, if I start my day with a meditation or a forest walk, or I go have a conversation with the creek on my lands or with the cedars outside my door, and allow them to inform me of what responsibilities to prioritize, um, things tend to flow better. I feel in right relationship, and perhaps some of my cultural band responsibilities might be dropped in a way. It's sort of like my earthly responsibilities, the responsibilities of my soul and my heart seem to be cared for more, which, in my experience, if that's going well, then everything else seems to go pretty well as well.
Hmm.
So that's what comes up for me, is like just honoring the natural, geometry, evolution, like flow of life. It starts with earth, starts from the ground, that informs everything, that holds everything, and starting there and allowing that to inform my cultural body and how I show up in culture.
And how do you, thank you, and like, how do you, or do you ever have the experience of one part of you, like your soul or your spirit, like wanting to kind of disappear into that nature, into the unknown, or into like the arms of the earth, and joyfully play out there? Mm. and and then, like, do you ever get, I don't know if it's lost is the thing, but it's like, do you ever find yourself adrift from the center of your life of influence, like the work that you want to do in the world? like how do you integrate the two? How do you bring back the inspiration and notice when there's and respond to the call in you to like come back to human culture and to offer in that place?
Hmm. Um, Good question. Um, there's a couple things. Like a big first thing that comes up is like I usually get hungry and the food is at my house. um, so I come home to eat. Um, um, and in my own life path experience, I spent a lot of time drifting. I started hitchhiking when I was 18, and I paid very little attention to money or work, and really just kind of followed what it felt like my spirit and soul needed. So, spent a lot of time in eco villages and meditating and doing really long backcountry trips, and working very little and spending a lot of time alone, and maybe disappearing a bit too far into the spiritual worlds. Um, and that culminated in me like sitting in a cave in the Himalayas, by myself, doing another long retreat, whereas I was deep in the spirit and deep in the soul, and what emerged from that place felt like a call from the earth to return more to culture, and to um, bring some of the things that I've discovered in my journeys outside of culture back to culture. So it feels in a way that um, my drifting and connection with the earth kind of like pushed me back in a way that feels really true. And before, like, I just dealt with a lot of social anxiety and like self-esteem issues, and discomfort with culture and society. And since I felt this push from what I call my soul, right, and the soul of the earth, in conversation, like culture feels way more interesting to me.
Mm.
Like it feels like a more soulful place. Like kind of position myself as like a cultural creative in a way. Like I get kind of shaping how the little culture around me develops in my relationship with culture, whereas before culture was shaping me in my more formative years growing up, and I suffered a lot because of that.
Mm.
Um, so I think there's a thing there of like the earth doesn't want us to connect with culture, disconnect wholly from culture, um, forever. Like the earth created humans, the earth created culture. Like if she has an intelligence, she's doing something through her creation of culture, and my question is, how do I participate in that most fully?
Mm.
um,
Hmm.
yeah. How about you? What's your experience with that, Scott?
Yeah. John Young talks about this archetype of a certain kind of nature connected person that he calls the sociopathic naturalist. And is someone who's like so like he's basically they're really like fuck humans, nature's the best, like everything makes sense in nature, at least nature's honest, like I can go out into the forest and yeah, it's not utopia, but I can see a bird killing another bird, and it's just honest, it's all just laid out there and bare, and like, and I just want to be out here with my pain by myself and not connect with other humans. And in some ways I don't in some ways that was me, that's not exactly me, but I did for a long time kind of go secretly to the forest with my own pain, and had a sense that like somehow my feelings about what's happening on the earth, and the human impact, and the unwillingness in most of human culture to just to be really straightforward and honest with it, Like I'd like see something and like try and bring it up in conversation. Like, this is fucked that this is happening. It's fucked just how much garbage each human uses almost by design, or creates almost by design. And I was really frustrated that I wasn't able to get through to people. And I had all these feelings, and it intuitively felt like the place in me that feels is just automatically connected with nature. Like it's like it's this wordless place of animal feeling, and I can be out here, nothing out in the forest is going to look at me and be like, who the fuck is this guy with his feelings? It's just like, it's like this one time I had a huge cry, and a dog of the family that I was living with came up and licked the tears off of my face. And I'm just like, oh my God, like you're so beautiful and amazing. And it's so simple. And then the dog was like, it was very honest about how gross my tears tasted. That really wanted to show me care. And that I think after a while, one of my elders was just like, said to me something about like, it's great to go out into the forest and connect with nature, but yeah, sometimes like eventually, he said it in a really poetic way, but he just hinted at me that there's more to human culture. Like there's a whole forest within human culture. There's a way to relate to human culture and to be with other humans, and that it's okay to be like that. And I realized, man, my ability to communicate with other people, what I'm feeling is really not, it's just not there. Like I'm just forcing things down people's throats. And yeah, that I had an urgent, it was in a way, it wasn't that I didn't want to connect with humans, it's just that I just started to believe that I'm not capable of it. Or it's too hard, or other people are too stubborn, or the things that I'm feeling are too huge and too like extreme, and there's no way to put it into words in a way that other people will be able to hear it and won't be like just try and kill me or kick me out of the culture or something. And yeah.
How do you feel about that now?
I mean, I feel really glad to see where I've come from since then. I'm still working with those edges, but the edges have broadened, or I've stepped to the edge, and I've gained a lot of capacity for communicating with people and communicating my feelings. And yeah, now I'm at a new edge of really putting myself out there more publicly, starting, releasing newsletters and doing more workshops and just putting out workshops and content that I sense other people are like that. Other people are they're like in this place of, I don't know if I can share, and I want to speak to that. I want to speak to those people and like offer that there is a different possibility. And so it's still scary for me because I still have the fears of, oh, maybe someone will kill me or interpret what I have to say in a way that's, yeah, it's they use it to attack me or something. So there's still there's the fear, there's the sadness, the anger. But I'm glad to be in a place where I can offer, I like just to look back and be like, wow, I've been on a journey. Does that answer the question?
Totally. Thank you. It's interesting. What that's bringing up for me is just tracking your story and mine, and just some awareness from some of my teachers of, let me say, it feels like there's, or it's felt really important for me to have some space to like really go deep into that place where it's like I can be in my authentic feeling and be safe, and the forest has been that place for me. And I Bill Plotkin would say, like, in intact culture, like this would happen within culture a lot more regularly. Like people can show up in their full authentic truth, no matter how messy, no matter how challenging, and kind of be celebrated for that and accepted and safe. It doesn't seem to happen so much in our culture. I think in a way, it's like the hegemonic structures of capitalism particularly make feeling maybe a bit dangerous. Like if we're extracting resources from the earth in a way that's not necessarily honoring the earth, if we're connected to the earth, that feels really painful. So there's a value in numbing our feelings so that we can continue supporting this capitalist model that we live in. As just one example. So our culture benefits from not feeling too deeply, because there's a lot of pain to feel, and the culture would have to shift if we started feeling more deeply.
I just want to just to interrupt for a moment.
Please.
I just want to draw a distinction for. I prefer not to speak in the terms of like our culture for myself, anyways. Like I like the distinction of like I was born into this thing called modern culture, but it's one form of culture, and there are other distinct forms like modern culture views itself as the culture, and its edges are just always expanded. It's either modern culture or just like nature, other things, other vague planets, Gaia, indigenous culture. It's just the ever expanding bulldozer edge of modern culture overtaking everything. And I want to offer that there's new kinds of cultures or next cultures that are forming that I much more identify as my culture, the thing that I want to grow. And anyways, I want to offer that as we might use modern culture to describe modern culture.
Yeah, thank you. I totally resonate with that. So thank you for making that distinction and boundary more clear, because it's like that's also where I find my authentic truth. If I have a boundary and I'm creating, or I'm part of creating with many others, a next culture, a new culture. That's distinct from modern culture, but also connected, supported, integrated with it in some way, because it helps shape who I am and my experiences and the experiences of most people I connect with.
And I want to get back to the thing you were saying before, and I want to say this whole frame of what is modern culture, what are next cultures, how do they interrelate, how are they distinct, like it's a really juicy thing we can get into that I imagine we have a lot in common and some things different in terms of our approach to that. And yeah, it's part of what I'd love to dig into in future episodes or just generally with you.
Great. Yeah, I agree. Thank you. And in a way, I feel like this is what I was trying to express, but not consciously, is like making these distinctions of what sort of experiences happen in next culture, that are more life-serving, more generative, more beautiful. Maybe these are some of the orientation points that I like to work with. And what I was talking before was how numbing feeling seems to be a modern culture trait that's useful to perpetuate its own existence. That maybe less sensitive feeling and authenticity and capacity to be open and lost in the wonder and awe and beauty of nature, is in somehow in opposition to the capitalist agenda, which uses Earth resources to sustain itself, and to provide support for the humans that live in modern culture. And that's why capitalism has also been so successful. It does actually provide for humans really well in a way that has never existed before. We have 9 billion people on this planet, which never would have been possible in models that were existing previous. So it's not all about just honoring that it has its beauty and power, and it's not sustainable. And my interest is in living in a culture that is sustainable and life-serving for more than just humans. And the ones who rely on humans, these other beings, maybe dogs, cats, horses, cows, corn, soy. Yeah, so I'm curious, maybe what other things might evoke for you of what are next culture traits, or a next culture that you would want to live in? What are some like important foundational parts for that to exist in a sustainable way?
Yeah, thank you. There's a territory of things that I'm clear, like I already have integrated into my life at a social level that like work for me and for my friends and colleagues, and then there's this unknown territory of like things that haven't been solved, so to speak. That it really, so I just want to say, first off, that I'm not about to describe utopia or a fantasy kind of thing. It's really, but there's, which I feel, yeah, is an important thing just to put on as a announcement at the beginning, because so often whenever some kind of evolution of culture is discussed in modern culture, it's discussed in a debate form, and there's these hot button issues in media that are killed. Like the whole vision of a next kind of culture is just killed really quickly on the frying pan of mainstream media. Like there's no place for it. Like we have to really create different spaces to even begin talking about these sorts of things. And so like one thing that's really clear to me is a space where feeling is allowed is a space where this conversation can begin to happen. A space where awareness and connectivity and sensitivity to the earth is a place from which this conversation can start to happen. There is, for like since beginning around 10,000 years ago, modern culture began to really start to reach out, and the pattern of colonization started to happen more and more. And with that, authentic rites of passage began to be eliminated and made illegal. And so a rite of passage being a marker held by culture for how, like, determining and really preparing a young person for adulthood or for one of the initiations of life. This is something that can only exist in a culture that can really feel and be connected to the earth and be honest with itself around like what's needed, what's happening in the world, where do we go from here? Like, because we don't know, we can't, like we don't know how to prepare our kids for what's coming. So it's this connectivity to being in touch with the unknown, being in touch with inventiveness and playfulness and curiosity. I have the image of a plant that's being deprived of water and nutrients, and like sort of nursing this little plant back to health carefully. So many of us are atrophied just by the unconscious design of culture, of the things we don't get. And I feel fear that, like, I don't want to come across as like blaming or pointing fingers, being like, oh, it's their fault, they did this. You know, I think a lot of this is this cascading cause and effect of many unconscious choices from the past that have led to this point. And now there's a bottleneck and kind of a stranglehold on so many people just by design of the culture. So getting together in a big focus for me is getting together in small groups. Doesn't have to be small, but something about small groups, like being together in small groups, I think awakens some very human part of us to respond and to like to meet in such a way that we're meeting in spaces where feelings are allowed, where we're practicing communication skills that are just like healthy, where we're actually hearing one another, and that it makes collaboration towards something different possible. But I can't tell you, I can't say like right now we need to start rebuild, like tear it out. There's a lot that I don't know, and that's why I'm kind of hedging my conversation right now, is because I don't have answers to everything. But in a way, I think like everything that is a psychopathic hierarchy needs to be changed into a circle where it's like, how do we as humans get what we need, and how do we need to start over with a totally different way of relating. That's my impulse.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Kind of the part that caught me there was you're saying the importance of small groups. And what I'm noticing is, and this might even be a fallacy of talking about the concept of modern culture, is like as if culture can be one thing. Like if we and this is a certain quality that's existing now, that it is new in a way. There's the last few hundred years of globalization, of now there's actually experience of the vast majority of people able to communicate across the planet, like across different distinct cultures, and it's created this thing that looks like a massive civilization culture that's all deeply connected. But it's like when parts are broken down into differentiated parts, like there's just billions of cultures of, it's like you and I have our own culture just going on in our friendship. I have that with all my one-on-one friendships. I have a different culture that exists on the land co-op that I live on. I have a smaller culture that exists on my own acre where I have my yurts and my like friends that I'm living in this eco-village experiment with. And so they all have their own culture, and there's capacity to create maybe much more authentically when all the voices are heard, like you said, in a circle. Like if 9 billion people on the planet stood in a circle, like there's no place for any individual authentic voice to be heard. Unless maybe it's one speaking very loudly. But when we stand in small circles, then there's a lot more space for each to be heard. So I'm not sure where I'm going with this, but there's something about like really honoring the distinction of the many, many different cultures. And I think lots of, or all the intelligence perhaps of what next culture looks like already exists within these smaller cultures in a way. Like the information's already there. And maybe it's even a fallacy to imagine a next culture, like a globalized next culture is not what we're looking for. We're looking like what is sustainable, what is beautiful, what is life-serving is diverse. It's many differentiated parts and perspectives like communicating together. It's not about like any sort of monolith. And like I think there might be an issue even talking about modern culture in like just paving over the idea that there are actually billions of cultures already existing within modern culture, and we're zooming out too far to look at this one monoculture. But if we zoom in a bit, there's already intense intelligence already existing within the subcultures of modern culture, of which us people who are distinguishing ourselves as next culturalists are part of.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, I really want to be careful not to argue with you.
I like a good creative conflict.
No, but I also just don't have that impulse. Like, and I'm just aware of how automatic that can be, to be like, no, you're like your position, the thing you just laid out, like that you just described as a fallacy, like that can, like, I have to be right. I have to make you wrong. No, that's, I really actually want to get into all these, I want to be aware of where are the fallacy, like if I'm in a fallacy, what's the fallacy? You know, if I believe that solar panels are a really great green technology that will solve everything, but then, oh no, they're actually made out of coal and quartz, and they only last like whatever 20 to 50 years, and then it's like, no, we got to harvest more coal and quartz. So it's like I want to have those bubbles burst, even if it's painful. Okay, anyways, to your point, the vision that comes up for me is there are so many people in the world, and they have cultures, they have families, have these, and the way that modern culture has, I'm going to speak of modern culture as a thing, even if it's an imperfect fallacy to some extent. The way that human modern culture has arranged itself is there are many, I use the word game world, but let's say more broadly, organizations that where they're designed in such a way that the power flows upwards and into these hierarchies. And as these hierarchies grow and they combine and they become these monopolies, the people who are out there in those individual cultures connected, they become really harnessed to those hierarchies, to the power, you know, what these corporations decide goes, and whoever is affected, and whatever costs are externalized to the environment or to human culture, those costs are externalized, and what I would propose is that a move towards something that we might call next culture is a move to more relocalization, and that starts with those individuals in those cultures really being centered in themselves, really being clear about, like, there's a lot of people who are out there, and I don't mean this to offend anybody, who are zombies. And it's not good or bad, there's no shame in that, but it's like, it's really, it's these are people who have been abused to the point that they've given up their center of authority to the belief of somehow modern culture being something that is sane in its design, that is actually, no, it's mostly okay and it's mostly not. Corporations are mostly okay, and corporations, meanwhile, many of them externalizing enormous costs to the environment and to human culture. Mm. and and then with their PR teams saying, no, we're doing great work, we're here for the benefit of humans and love and the environment, and we've got an environmental board. And so the distinction comes in at the individual level. Is there are many people out there who are zombies, or who are hooked into the system so thoroughly that they aren't even aware that they have huge creative capacities to do different things, regardless of the circumstances that they live in. And so next culture originates within the individual, within these small groups, and doing something different. And it's I want to be aware too of the, I can imagine some people will say, like, well, you're a white guy who was born into a really cozy, family growing up, and you're not wrong. And 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 so there are possibilities available to me that there are not to other people. And it still changes nothing about what I said, because I take a stand for the creative capacity for people. And because it is possible to shift, make shifts in the way that we as individuals approach the world, regardless of the circumstances. Okay, I'll stop talking about that for now.
Thank you. There's a piece I'm curious there that's very true in my story. You're just mentioning about the privilege, and I'm curious about the don't quite know how to articulate this, but let's say and maybe this will be a conversation for next time, but something about the the shift from being in a place of privilege, like I am a white cisgendered male from a middle-class family who experienced low trauma, and it seems that the vast majority of my peers, and myself included at times, of like, because I'm so benefited by the system of modern culture, like I have less impulse to change, make change, or make a shift, because my life is so easy, and modern culture will continue supporting me, but at the expense of marginalized people, at the expense of the natural world. And so I think the learning, the methodology to support those with privilege into what I might call maybe a more compassionate worldview, a more ecocentric worldview, feels quite vital, because most of the power is looped in with basically rich white old guys.
Mm.
And so there's a lot of like resource and power that in unlocking their intimacy with modern culture could allow a lot more beauty to emerge,
Mm.
a lot more support and balance for the marginalized people and the oppressed earth. But so it's like, what's the key to help those who are most privileged and most benefited by the destructive culture to move into a new way of being?
Mm-hmm.
Like what happens in there? And I think we've both been dwelling a lot in the methodology of this for most of our adult lives, but maybe this is the next podcast, because I think it's about time to end this one today.
Yeah. And and I think I just want to voice that there are methodologies and then there are non-methodologies. And like, for example, learning to feel, there might be methodologies for how to get there. There are hints, there are clues, there are signposts, and then there's just the non-methodology of falling the fuck apart. And the honesty of falling the fuck apart, just in a heap in the corner, like, you know, being like, oh, all these billions of dollars that I have, or whatever it is, all it could, like, for me, it's like all the stories I have about myself, all, like, there's something so humaning about getting back in touch with feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And there's something about sadness that I'm particularly, like, right now just in love with. Of, if I can be in touch with my sadness, I can hear you, I can communicate, I can in a totally different way. How do we as humans use our anger? How do we use our sadness? How do we, like, relate to all these feelings within? And it's with I've seen it again and again. If one person is like walled off in a conversation, and like basically a fuck you to another person who's trying to give them feedback, if they can get in touch with their feelings and into their sadness and just kind of all that can, like, just kind of go liquid and melt away, and a whole different way of connecting is possible. And we can't control people to be more connective. I think all we can do is create more spaces for those who are ready to transform. And yes, I'm up for this being a jumping off point for next time.
Great. Well, really enjoyed the conversation today, Scott, as always.
Yeah.
Looking forward to next week.
Yeah, thanks. And just to everyone out there, please, again, if you happen to be someone who listened to the end here, let us know how this landed for you. You can donate if you want to be a patron to our PayPal that I'll link below. My website is bridgesnextculture.com. Michael's website is michaeljeffrey.com. He doesn't have a website yet, but but I want him to, because he has offerings that are worthy of a website. And anyways, let us know if how this landed for you, and we'd love to be in touch and have you be part of our circle in a way. I don't know what will come of this, but yeah, thanks. Well, I'm gonna end the meeting. I'm gonna stop.